on this beautiful Thursday, coming to you from Southern California, where we are in 87-degree weather here in San Diego on the 19th of March, but we are making do. We've got an exciting guest for you guys today. Bryan Stewart is the Chief Marketing and External Relations Officer at Goodwill of Southern Nevada, a nonprofit organization dedicated to workforce development, job training, and community support through retail operations and programming that helps individuals overcome barriers to employment, summarized as saving the waste in people and things. He joined the organization in late 2021, initially as Vice President of Marketing and Communications, and has since led major initiatives, including the launch of the Goodwill Works brand platform and guidelines, building in-house creative publication services, signage, and multi-channel campaigns, orchestrating the organization's 50th anniversary celebration, creating internal programs like award recognitions, customer compliments portal, leadership development fellowship, and an in-store fundraising initiative supporting local nonprofits. With over 3 decades of experience in nonprofit management, branding strategy, healthcare, consumer products, sports, and entertainment, he focuses on driving growth, community engagement, partnership, events, and inspiring support for Goodwill's mission of job placement and empowerment. He's based in Las Vegas, Nevada, and has been featured in local media, including LV Now TV, 8 News Now, and collaborations with the Dress for Success of Southern Nevada chapter. He's active on LinkedIn at Bryan-D-Stewart, where he shares updates on Goodwill initiatives, branding insights, and community impact. Bryan, thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
Dylan, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation.
So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I am a Goodwill fan. I've got a wife here who makes about $2,000 a month and supplementing her shopping habit by finding amazing things at Goodwills and other thrift stores and flipping them on sites like Poshmark.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, we support a lot of small businesses that way, which is fantastic. The way that we can redistribute donated items, reposition them so it's easy for people to find what they're looking for. And whether you're on a budget or running a small business, it's great to be a pillar of the community that way.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, most of my wardrobe is actually from secondhand stores and Goodwills. You would never notice it because I've got, Fendi shoes and nice dress shirts. My wife, she's a real savant in finding the good things, but no pun intended. But, I think one of the more important aspects of it for me is kind of, trying to, be less of a consumer and, recycle things and have an impact on, have an impact on our environmental sustainability footprint, but at the same time supporting great organizations like yours that do good in different communities. So with that, let's get into your origin story a little bit. So where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And how'd you get into nonprofit management and marketing?
Oh, wow. Great. We're going to look back. Well, in my introduction, when you said 3 decades, it's like, well, they gave my age away right there.
Sorry.
I lived in Oklahoma till I was almost 12 years old, and then moved to the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area, a town called San Mateo. Went to middle and high school there. And then I was captivated by the energy of Los Angeles. And so I applied for the UC system, got into UCLA, and spent 5 years there. I've always had, I think, a heart for nonprofit work. And in fact, one of my gifts to UCLA as a freshman, I started a lip sync contest in the dorms that I ended up being involved with and running for 5 years. And by my 5th year, it was a big tradition. In fact, it ran another 6 years after I left. It was called Mock Rock. The first year I performed as Billy Idol. Back then I had the hair for it. And the last year I said, let's put a new spin on this and let's make it a fundraiser for AIDS organizations. So this is in 1989. At the time, there was still a lot of stigma about people that were living with AIDS, and people were still very scared of it. And I just leaned right into it. And I said, let's bring this and let's make this something that people have to be so scared of. So made that into a fundraiser, and then decided on a career in, entertainment in general. But for me, it's been more about, I think of it as funneling energy. I think I've always had a feeling, even in high school, that people have this energy. We're social people. We like to be involved in things together, but it doesn't happen by magic. You have to create a reason for people to get together. And I think when you can make it meaningful and easy and something you go away from, wow, I'm really glad I was part of that. I like to design those things. So I started out after college. My first job was at Paramount Pictures in the mailroom.
Nice.
Soon after, I went into publicity and promotions. I found that's my wheelhouse, and then realized, well, I actually wrote a script for Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was shot on the lot.
Wow, that's
And just
cool.
yeah, it was really cool. But it's such a solitary thing. Writing is very solitary, and also you write and you hand it off to someone, you can't really see the end result of what you created. And sometimes it can vary tremendously. So I said, let's get back into live entertainment where I cut my teeth with lip sync contests. And I did pretty much the exact same thing, but with pro beach volleyball of all things. So I knew nothing about volleyball, but I knew how to put an event together and promote it and make it a great experience and build anticipation for coming. So that was for 5 years. And then I used that as a qualifier to put in my hat in the ring to be part of Major League Soccer when they were launching MLS after World Cup 94. So the inaugural
Wow.
season, 1996, I became part of this incredibly strong, brilliant team of people that were trying to make football, the world's game, work once and for all in the US. And we had a big chip on our shoulder, but we made it work. And I was very lucky to be part of it. But then the league office moved from Los Angeles to New York. I didn't want to move to New York. And so long story short, I went to go work with one of my former beach volleyball sponsors, a backpack company, as their director of marketing. Moved into branding for Siegel and Gale, which is a major branding
Oh
firm. And
yeah, I
I
know
think
those
that would have
guys.
been,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
Seagulls. They're part of Stagwell now, I think.
yeah, okay,
Yep.
yeah. And then I thought that would have been my life career. I really love it, but I got laid off after 9/11. All of our new business
Mm.
dried up. And so one of my clients from Siegel and Gale brought me aboard, and that was the region's organ donation network called
Mm.
One Legacy. Um, they weren't called One Legacy at the time, but they were my client, and I helped them rebrand not just the name, but how they would present themselves to the world. So it was really starting from the ground up. I mean, it was like blank slate, and I reached out and just reaching out for some contacts because I was out of work, and they said, you know what, you really get this. Why don't you come aboard? So
Wow.
healthcare scared the crap out of me. But to be honest with you, the flip side of something being scary is it's exciting. And so I
Mm.
decided to lean into that. And sure enough, I really knew it and grasped I love the importance of it. It was meaningful, and building relationships with donor families and recipients, and of course, hospitals and transplant centers, all of which we really didn't have relationships with because this organization had never invested in that kind of relationship building. So I was there for 14 years, absolutely loved it. And then after 14 years, the thing is, it's a beautiful field to be in, to be a bridge between hospitals and transplant centers, but it's very heavy, as you can imagine.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
emotionally very heavy. I didn't even realize how much so until I was no longer in the field. And so I did a couple of, I was an interim CEO for a couple of a small organization, and also for the backpack company. They brought me back 15 years later because the family is a family business, and one side was buying out the other side. And so they kind of needed someone they trusted, both sides, someone they trusted to keep things on, going while they worked all that out, which is kind of dramatic. And then once those were settled, I went to work for my mentor from Major League Soccer for his sports marketing agency called Premier Partnerships. And then I was recruited by the Tournament of Roses to head parade development for the Rose Parade.
Wow.
The reason
Wow.
why is when I was in the organ donation field, the very first project that someone brought to me on day one was a letter from a lung recipient suggested we enter a float in the Rose Parade to promote organ donation, to thank donor families, and to put a more tangible face on the abstract idea of organ donation. And frankly, organ donation was very scary at the time. This is around 2001. And I read that letter and I said, putting something scary like organ donation and transplantation into the Rose Parade right next to Disney and Honda and Kodak and all these other brands, we could shift how people thought about organ donation. That you could create this beautiful story with a float filled with live flowers and people who are remembering their loved ones and who are alive because of the generosity of others. If we could do that, then they would see that and go, why am I scared? This is beautiful. And so I headed that campaign for 11 years before I handed things off. That's now in its 23rd year. And that experience with the Rose Parade more than qualified me to, jump into the parade itself and be a part of that. However, COVID, just like getting after 9/11, COVID hit, canceled my second parade. And it left me wondering, I love every day coming in and producing something. Like, make every day count. What can I do? At least 2 really good deliverables every day. And to think that I'm working all year long only for that to dissipate. I thought, I felt very vulnerable. And so that's when I started to see, maybe there's something else out there, something that I can really be part of that's meaningful. And this opportunity to come to Las Vegas, I'd never considered ever coming to Las Vegas. It wasn't at all on my bingo card, but I made 2 trips out to Vegas, 2 Sundays in a row, and I could see they needed my help. And I could see I could be helpful. And the skill set I'd amassed over a long career could be put very much to use here in Southern Nevada. It was the right size market, the right size organization. I could get to know everyone. It's, some people like to work for a huge conglomerate. I like to work for a company where I can know as many of the people as possible. So knowing all the store management teams, knowing the people in the warehouse, knowing the people that offer our community services with job placement, workforce development, to be able to have relationships and to speak authentically and represent them authentically on their behalf to the media. That felt really like a great next step. So that was a little over 4 years ago, and we've made great strides since then. So there you go. How's that?
I love it. Great. Well, that was an amazing bio, and you did it with such finesse. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, I'm curious on the work that you did with on organ transplantation.
Okay.
So is that where you like get your license in the mail each year and you put the sticker on saying you're willing to? Is that kind of the primary customer behavior?
Okay, so that's the primary funnel for people to register as donors. But back in 2001, California was well known for the pink dot sticker on your license, but it was not a computerized registry. The sticker itself had no legal bearing, and hospitals never saw it, because when someone came into the hospital with a major, usually a head injury, where the brain dies, but the body can be kept functioning on a ventilator so that organs are perfused with blood and oxygen for transplant. The hospitals never saw their license because their personal affects immediately go into security. So I once hosted a conference with 1,000 nurses, and I asked them, how many of you have ever seen a license with a pink dot? 4 people raise their hands.
Wow.
Yeah. Never saw it. So then once computerized registries started coming along, we created a website. We got the authorization from the state to create a registry, but it wasn't tied with the DMV. So the numbers were minimal. So what was essential, once we built it, we had to get new legislation to say, okay, now we're going to have the DMV be your funnel. And that's where pretty much all the states do that now. And at the time, maybe about 15 states had computerized donor registries. And once that funnel was hooked up, gangbusters.
Wow. What is the opt-in of the pink dot? Do you know off the top of your head?
You mean that the numbers?
Yeah, like how many people pop that sticker on, when they get their driver's license
It
in the
varies a
mail?
lot by state.
Yeah.
In California, it's probably in the 30 to 35%. It's not very high.
Wow. Okay.
It doesn't mean people don't want to be donors. It means they don't want to just make it automatic and have the healthcare system just handle it. A lot of people, especially in a state as diverse as California, certain cultures, they like to involve their families in these kinds of decisions. So, for instance, Asian communities, they want their elders to be part of the decision. And so to make that decision without them is not respectful. So that's an example. But in another state like Colorado, where it's more homogeneous and where the weather, this is what I feel like, weather brings people together. When you're cold, your communities kind of have to tie together more, right?
Yeah.
And so there's more a sense of community because you're sharing these circumstances together. Their donor designation rates were in the 85%.
Wow.
In that area. So I looked at that very carefully, and the closest proxy measure that I could find when we were trying to understand why people donate or don't, and why the great variation state by state, was the percent of people who volunteered. People that communities, states that where there was a high propensity to volunteer for service had high donor designation rates. That it was really, the question wasn't, do you want to donate your organs? It was, do you want to help your community? And I think that's something I really relate to now with Goodwill, because it's all about helping your community. Choosing to donate to us because we can convert, your household goods that are in still good shape and no longer needed, and can help other people thrive.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So did you guys act on that consumer insight? Were there, campaigns that you launched that weren't directly about, trying to get people to opt into the registry or use the pink dot, but more to inspire this culture of volunteerism or service?
Yes, I think so. I think that really broadened our language so that we could talk about, it's not about donating organs, it's about helping each other and, being a giving person. And so, in fact, when we would do radio ads back when, radio was a much more influential medium, we would dramatize the difference that it made, but we wouldn't mention death. We would talk about how giving this person was, and it'd be a first person saying, you know what, my father was a registered donor, and thanks to his generosity, and then you'd have three voices come up. I was able to take my son to his first soccer game. I was able to walk my daughter down the aisle. I was able to finish my college education. So it was really about, what were you making possible, and making it more tangible and concrete where people could relate to that.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, that's a pretty cool ability to tap into that insight, and then it gives you a much broader brand platform, as you mentioned.
And if I could jump onto that
yeah,
for 1 second,
please do.
I will say that the through line, I've obviously had a very eclectic career, but I have always started with, how do people feel? Whoever it is that I'm trying to organize into some kind of event or campaign or follow a brand, how do they feel, and how do they need to feel relative to what I'm offering? And so, and that gets like, for instance, to the Rose Parade. How they feel? They're scared that, people won't work as hard to save them if they're in an accident and they're, got the dot.
Mm-hmm.
How do I want them to feel? That it's beautiful to, for other people to live and for communities to share with one another. So whatever it is we were creating in terms of a story or as a communication, it was always thinking at the that experience, have I gotten them closer to how I want them to feel? So it's not what do I want to say, what do they need to hear? What do they need to experience? And I think that throughout every step of my career, even my script for Star Trek says, how do I want Wesley, a character, to feel? Well, I'd love for him to meet his dad. Well, his dad died 15 years ago. How could he do that? By going to the holodeck. And his dad left him a program where he walked into the holodeck and it triggered, and now they're having a conversation. And then I thought, how would that make the audience feel? Magical.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could do that with my own dad or my own mom or my grandpa or my abuela. So it's that approach, and I really tried to bring that into everything I do.
I love it. So 37 years as an Angelino, what's it like living in Las Vegas?
I really love it here.
Nice.
I use so much more of my time because I don't have to deal with traffic and scheduling my life around traffic. That's the big one. I was actually calculating recently how much time I have wasted sitting in gridlock or sitting on the roads over the course of over 4 years. Maybe 5 hours.
Wow.
Grand total.
That's crazy.
So I just feel like I'm using my time really well. Also, because so many people come to Vegas from elsewhere, I feel like people put a lot of energy into the community and meeting each other, especially if you can find, affinity groups, like the art community or the fashion community, communities that have a tangential relationship to thrifting, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
creativity that comes with it. Just open arms. It's like they're so ready for someone to come in and give and add to the community. There's no like, oh, sorry, you can't be along to this. This is already all done. It's all set. You don't have that. So it's a really dynamic energy. And it reminds me of the energy that Los Angeles had back when I first came to LA in the mid 80s.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And obviously having explosive growth these days. So, something that I've learned I have no direct experience with this, but just as I've kind of seen different Goodwill leaders pop up in my LinkedIn feed.
Mhm.
So it seems to me that you guys operate on kind of a tier model, not dissimilar to the franchise world or the
Mhm.
automotive world, where you have this master brand of Goodwill that is
Mhm.
kind of creating a halo at the top of the funnel, let's
Mhm.
say. And then you have regional CMOs like yourself that are responsible for stewarding the brand from the perspective of a regional jurisdiction. Will you tell me a little bit about how does Goodwill operate as a marketing organization from this
Sure.
idea of master brand and then the regionals, and then how do you collaborate and
Mhm.
get the most bang for your buck, so to speak,
Sure.
between the master organization
Mhm.
and the tiered market, so to speak.
Sure, absolutely. Great question. And because Goodwill is present in so many places, I think sometimes there's a thinking that oh, it's just one organization. What it is Goodwill is a federated model. So we are united in our approach to the appeals we make for donations, the services we provide both as an employer ourselves and also as offering training programs, or even having enterprises within other than just thrift stores, like we can contract services. But what I think unifies it in general is that some call it a movement. I see that term being used, but I think it's more of a philosophy. And I think that comes back to I always come back to the quote from Edgar J. Helms, who founded Goodwill, saving the waste in people and things.
Wow, I
And there's
love
a
that.
great deal of responsiveness to each of the communities we serve. So we have about 155, 52, somewhere around there. It shifts because you have mergers sometimes. But it's 155 organizations across the country in the US and Canada that serve specific geographic areas. So kind of like organ donation, right? You don't want to compete with other Goodwills in overlapping markets. And the expectation is that you will meet not just expectations, but the requirement is you have to meet certain guidelines in terms of how you use the marks and how you share information, because we share data with each other so we can see how we are doing with respect to our efficiency, our financial health, with respect to donations coming in. Are we seeing trends in one part of the country that could end up coming our way? In terms of our store footprints, how our operations work. So there's every one of these Goodwills, especially like-sized ones, can easily compare with each other to get some kind of idea of how we're doing. We also learn from each other about what you'd call our programs of service. So in addition to employing people in our stores, many people who have not worked before or need a fresh start after maybe some rough life circumstances, we can train them up very quickly. It's no experience required. And then some of them move on very quickly and say, okay, I've shown I can show up for work and I can do a good job. And now I'm going to go work over here. That's okay. We call that good turnover. Some people make a whole career out of working at Goodwill. Other people come to the career centers that most Goodwill organizations have as a training, as a center for them to be trained into some kind of trade. So it could be simply a quick job placement with, say, home health care, or I want to be trained as a certified nursing assistant, or as a stagehand, or as a welder, or a truck driver. So almost, I would say pretty much universally, these programs of service are geared to people who are not on the college track, but that isn't their destiny. Their greatest potential can be achieved through a skilled trade or through some other kind of, perhaps more physical endeavor, although people get trained as, IT specialists and things like that. But more often than not, I'd say that the things we train for are more in the skilled trades, something closer to manufacturing than, say, a quote knowledge worker. And our whole idea, another philosophy of Goodwill, is a hand up, not a hand out. So it's important that people are ready to show up, want to take their careers seriously, and then they can come to us and they can be trained in these skilled trades at no cost to them. But we want to make sure they're going to make good use of that donation of a tuition or of supplies. And that is part of what donations to Goodwill fund, are these kinds of programs and employment at Goodwill that help lift up our whole community.
Wow, that's really cool. So, is the training program for vertical integration? So, if somebody trains as like an IT professional or a welder or a truck driver, is that because the intention is for them to go into the Goodwill organization as one of those jobs, or is the idea for them to go out into the workforce and use that training to find another job, or is it a little bit of a combination?
Yeah. It's pretty much exclusively going out into the workforce.
Got it.
So, we hire people as sales associates, as merchandise processors, where they're working with a lot of goods with their hands, making some judgment calls, as donation attendants, much more physical, but you're running a warehouse. You're collecting things and from cars and sorting them quickly and moving those big gaylords with, pallet jacks into position. So the merchandise processors prepare everything for sale and it goes out on the floor. And now you got sales associates that are helping people or ringing people up. All those positions can potentially train you to do other things outside Goodwill. But some people love the creativity, the camaraderie. They like doing something physical and want to do something with their hands, and it's certainly never boring. But for these kinds of programs that go through our career centers, those are very much, we are helping hospitals get the certified nursing assistants they need to operate. We are helping, truck driving companies find qualified people. And that's one thing that we can do is really match. We have career coaches that can match the aptitudes and interests of participants, we call them participants, and move them on track so they can get started on a career with upward mobility.
Love it. So let's get into some of the trends. So, social media and thrifting and conscious capitalism and, kind of the impact on sustainability are all top of mind for consumers now. You also have the economic factors. It's harder to make your dollars stretch these days. So how have you guys looked at the moment that we're in across all of those different forces in how we consume media and how people are consuming products? And how do you guys think about that from the perspective of marketing Goodwill as a place people should consider within some of those consumer behaviors?
It's a great question. I'd say right now, and it's going to be different on this because they're at different stages and have different capabilities from a marketing standpoint. I would say that up till now, we rely a lot on authentic content by people who love to thrift. that is probably the biggest way to get people engaged in the idea of thrifting in the first place, is not hearing from me tell them it's a good idea. It's by hearing people that live the life and find the joy in it and can authentically communicate that. You also have a lot of resellers that have very large viewing audiences that take people on virtual shopping trips down the racks and things like that. And they are, well, look at this and look at this. And that gives you, the thrill of the hunt. And it gives you an idea of, for anyone who says, well, I don't go to Goodwill, it can also allow them to see like our stores, and especially our new ones. They're very nice. I mean, it's like going into a quality retail location. Legacy stores can definitely use a refresh, new paint, new graphics, but the experience on the floor, things are organized. Finding your size and your color and the style that you're looking for. We make sure it's easy for people to shop. So, but to get back to your question, that doesn't mean we don't do certain things. And so what we will lean into, obviously, are the value we provide. And there are some people, and I think it's a fair thing. Everyone has their perception of what's a fair price. So for us, we feel an obligation to maximize the donations that come to us. That doesn't mean we want to be unreasonable, but it may be that the first week that color, so the way it works, and this is pretty much how all Goodwill stores work, you run through a cycle of hang tags week by week. Week 1, everything is coming out on the floor with a purple hang tag. The second week, it's still on the floor with a purple hang tag, the stuff that you just produced. The third week, it's 50% off. for 6 days. And the last day of the cycle, $1.
Wow.
Everything in the store with a purple hang tag, whether it was $3 to start with or $20 to start with, is $1. So at the end of the day, the value proposition is there, but in cases you're kind of waiting for that discount, right? So do we want to go and discount it right away? Not if we can't help to sustain our social enterprise. It is an enterprise. We put people to work. We have to pay rent. We have to do the things a business does, but we also have a social component, and we want to fund that as well. So the thing is, the way I see it is when everything in store, except for, say, the premium items, the red tags, or the new products, everything else is going down to $1. I'd say that's a pretty good deal.
I'd say so, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then last but not least, I'll just add that, it's very hard in such a fragmented media market now to reach people where they are. So I think more than ever, it's really important to execute at the store level so that when people have a pleasant experience, they become your ambassadors within their circle of influence. And so that can't be underestimated. And then, of course, we do some of the things that any marketing company would do in terms of, putting out messages about how your donations work for our community, or how when you shop, it's a great way to create your style, lean into the DIY and the creativity of it. So we kind of do all those things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. From the donation side, my wife yells at me all the time about this because I had a friend who was involved in kind of the bulk vintage clothing world and mainly shipping huge pallets of premium vintage clothing to Japan and to other markets. And at one point, I had this brand perception that Goodwill doesn't put any of the good stuff on the floor. They basically go through it, and then the best stuff gets put on pallets, and then that goes to vintage stores and it's sold at a premium, and you never even get to see it. So I always told my wife, I said, hey, just go to the local, the local stores that are run by, the little grandmas or whatever. And then she started going into Goodwills too. And she's like, no, I'm finding great things in Goodwills. Your advice was totally off base.
Yeah.
But can you tell me a little bit about the intake process of donations?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of sorting that doesn't ever get exposed to the public, or does everything eventually make it, everything that gets donated and is worth reselling, does that all eventually make it to your floor, or is there some kind of secondary market opportunities?
Great question. Unless it is broken or torn or soiled to the point that it can't, it should go on the sales floor, it makes its way to the sales floor or to e-commerce. So you bring in donations, say they come in, someone drops off a bag of clothing. And let's say you have some hard goods as well. The first thing you do is you have to sort it. What are these things, right? So you want to do that efficiently. Just like all retail, touch it as few times as possible, right? So we sort them into their various categories, and then it'll go to the linen processor and the clothing processor and electronics and shoes, right? It'll go to these categories, and then they're picking them out one by one. What is this? Is this an upscale brand? Is it a standard brand? And if so, what should the be on it? So in certain categories, they're judgment calls, especially with hard goods, because you're getting all these one-off things. You've never seen what a 4-inch tall gnome with a purple beard looks like. You've never seen that before. What's it worth? I don't know. So sometimes you're pricing it too low. Sometimes it's too high. That's what the art of the hunt is all about. For other categories, standard pricing. Pair of jeans, a blouse, right? So what we will do is all those things make our way into a standard store unless we have a list of brands. Those brands go to e-commerce because if you could sell it online instead of in the store, you can probably get 3 times the revenue. And
Wow.
again, people are donating stuff to us. We want to put those donations to work. That's more people we can help, both hire and also offer these free services to the public. So there are a list of brands that go straight to e-commerce. There's also a list that become in general categories red tags, and these are the premium items, premium brands that might be, say, instead of the jeans being $9, $8.99, they're $14.99 because they're a better brand. They aren't outrageous, but they'll be a little bit more. So those are the red tag premium items, and those go on sale every month, 50% off. So whatever doesn't sell, I told you earlier about the cycle of, say, one of the colors in the hang tags. Whatever doesn't sell after it's been through its cycle, we pull all that and goes to our clearance center. And all the Goodwills have these. They call them outlets or clearance centers. And what we do is we just put them all in a big, they call gaylords, these big boxes. We tip the gaylords into bins, and then we roll the bins out onto the floor, and their bins are out on the floor for an hour. So here's all this stuff that was on sale for 3 weeks at our store, or the red tag items that were on sale they were there for a month, and then we had a 50% off sale and they didn't sell. All that stuff gets gathered, and then we have people that literally go there every day, sometimes several times a day, going through the bins, collecting what they do, and they've got the eye for what people might want at a swap meet or what might want online, if they're their small business. So we roll it out on the floor. It stays there for an hour, and then it's done. It's been picked through. We pull whatever is left, and we put those into 1,000-pound bales. And then there are other markets around the world where people don't have access to first quality shoes or clothing. And we will ship those to vendors that say, we'll take it. We can take those to this other country, and we make sure that they're vetted, that this is not going into a big landfill somewhere, that these are people that have legitimate markets and customers. And I think we've seen it. Sometimes you see B-roll in, say, a country that has more poverty, and they're wearing these American branded shirts or like a soccer jersey or whatever. Like, where'd that come from? Probably from something like this. It may not have sold at our store on Las Vegas Boulevard, and it didn't sell at our clearance center. But you know what? Someone in this country will think that that's a prize. They got a piece of a place they aspired to live someday or live like someday. So we're happy to provide that. Our goal is to find a new home for as many of the things that are donated as possible. We estimate that it's somewhere between 83 and 87% of everything that's donated to us, we're able to find a new home for it and divert it from a landfill.
Wow.
Find new life.
That's amazing. I love that. So let's talk about the idea of merchandising. We've definitely seen this kind of increase in Goodwill layouts become, much more appealing kind of from a retail point of view. It doesn't feel disorganized. It feels very organized, exactly where to go to get the different things. And then you also have this emergence of kind of like the outlet inside of the store where maybe the red tag stuff and the premium stuff is featured more prominently. Tell us about the evolution of that. And also now we notice that there are kind of these outlet level merchandising folks who are very, traditionally oriented merchandising people who know how to dress a mannequin and they know how to build great displays. How much has that been an evolution in the way that you guys are trying to build out the user experience of the stores, but also look for talent who have that kind of traditional merchandising mentality?
Yeah. I would say in our standard thrift stores, merchandising experience and putting a lot of attention into that is, not a huge, it's not like we're recruiting for that. It's again, that's something that can be trained up. And typically, as in many, say, big box stores like Home Depot, where you kind of have your impulse aisle or along the checkout line where a lot of the new goods are, things that you can't really donate too much, right? Things that are from the bathroom and the kitchen and etc. How those get displayed, we can train up to that, and it kind of makes sense where they go. But in the boutiques, you definitely value someone that's got some retail and knows how to make something look great. So we have a boutique called Deja Blue. It's up near Summerlin, which is a high income area here in Las Vegas Valley. And I mean, you walk in there and you can't believe it's a Goodwill. And frankly, we actually keep it very on the down low because it is such a different experience. And we want it to be elegant. And, we created some new treatments of not a logo per se, but some ways to communicate about Goodwill that that are just not your typical smiling G. But that said, and keep in mind, other markets, like I think Goodwill Southern California, I think they have 10 boutiques.
Yeah,
so
we have one in La Jolla
very,
that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, those are very important places and destinations for some of the branded items. But for the stores, every time we open a store, we have the benefit of taking our time in terms of laying everything out, loading it up with merchandise, because the opening weekend is a really big deal. And I think everyone who's a thrifter knows, man, they're really great stuff because you want to kick it off well. We take photographs of it. We take, photographs of every single rack, the latest and greatest techniques. We use that to train our other stores to make sure that they're holding it up to that level. But maintaining the user experience can be challenging when you've got Dollar Day Monday and everyone's coming out to get the dollar stuff, or double discount Wednesday when seniors save not just 20%, but double it to 40%. Very, very busy. So, they call it recovering the store, right? Like the next day, recovery. And it's getting as much as you can, everything back in position. So on those really busy days, it can be hard to maintain, that kind of quality experience, but we do our darndest to do it. But there are standards, and the way that we're organized with our categories and the expectations, the sequence of colors, we're very religious about, start with yellow, bright color. You don't want to start with white on the end. Start with yellow, and then go to orange, and then go to pink, and go to red, and so on. So that really helps, I think, the store look attractive right there, especially among the clothing racks, which lends itself to all the color.
I love it. That's very cool. Why do you think there's such a lack of things? Well, there's not a lack of things for men, but the women's space dwarfs the men's by many, levels of fullness. Is that a consumer behavior that women just have more clothes, donate more clothes, buy more clothes? I'm the type of guy where I will wear my jeans until they have a hole in it, and then I'll throw them away because I feel like they're no longer valuable. Tell us about the user experience and the difference between men and women and how that kind of shows up in thrifting.
Sure. Well, I think anytime you go to a mall, how many women's clothing stores are there and how many men's clothing stores are there? So, and yes, I mean, you're going to see that the women's sections will dominate. And I think it's really is just a matter of supply. But, we're flexible when things come in. But I think you're right. With men, it's less about being trendy. I'll keep suits. I've had suits now for at least 10 years.
Oh, same.
If not longer. And they're still in great shape. So I think, if you're not shopping at H&M where they're designed to fall apart after 10 washes, the high quality is there. But, men, you keep it, right? And I think women are, always looking for clothing. It's more expressive for women, right? Sometimes I see a guy, just the other day, I went to a coffee shop and I was like, Coffee Bean, I'll give him a shout out right now. And he had
Yeah.
this coolest jacket on. It was like, it was like a thin plaid, but it was like a light maroon. And I just looked and I went, that's an awesome jacket, And I keep telling myself at some point, Bryan, you can go beyond blues and blacks and grays and like brighten it up a little bit. So,
Yeah, I love that.
but and then also so many more styles for women. So it's not just quantity. Is it sleeveless? Is it half sleeve? Is it a formal dress? Is it a skirt? There's so many different styles of everything. So I think that's the thing too. There's just flat out more sections.
Yeah, totally. My closet is organized like
Mhm.
you walk in and the shoes are all in the right place and all the things
Right.
are and then my wife's looks like a bomb went off most of the time. All right. So I wonder on the pricing and kind of
Mhm.
the intake of items. Do you think AI will play a role soon, where somebody can take a camera and just go boom, and then it's like, hey, I know this brand. I
Mhm.
can tell the quality. I can look at my purchase data and
Mhm.
understand the average and how often this brand or in this style tends
Mhm.
to stay on the shelf before it gets put through.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an opportunity to connect conversion data to AI and then start using photo likeness to kind of maybe add some technology to the process?
Absolutely. And we're not there yet. And forgive me for not being able to name the Goodwill organization because I haven't been as deeply involved in it, but they are doing exactly that. Like they
Wow.
can take an image of it and know what it is, and I can help them with pricing. Also, you have things like dynamic pricing, where it can change based upon, whatever data they're feeding into it. And it could be a matter of weather. I mean, it could be trends, you name it. So, yes, I think that will happen. But obviously, it's a huge challenge when you're dealing with, you never know what's coming in the back door. So, for that to work, you really need quite the repository of
Yeah.
data to recognize, again, the, 4 inch tall gnome with a purple beard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still not a perfect mix. Well, so obviously as a nonprofit marketer, your dollars need to stretch in the
Mhm.
channels in which you guys activate. Earned
Mhm.
media seems to be quite effective for you. The
Mhm.
opportunity to go on local TV, the
Yes.
opportunity, like you mentioned, to leverage creators or people who
Mhm.
are going into the stores and creating content because they're professional thrifters and
Yes.
they use the idea of thrifting not just as a way to make money but also to build influence and build their own
Mhm.
micro media channels. How important is earned to your media mix?
Mm. Earned media, we have great opportunities with earned media, and we work with a terrific agency who knows the market very well, has bat phone access to all the TV stations. They tend to like to do live stand-ups are very common, especially with Halloween, because you can do the early morning wake up show hijinks, with costumes. So that's a big one. Or it could be a timely story, say during the afternoon news, where you're talking about buying a prom dress for less, or maybe the general, inflation's kind of high. Are you seeing more people coming in? Do you try and save money? Um, and the great thing about Goodwill, and maybe it's a blessing and a curse, is there's so many stories you can tell that are
Mm,
endemic to what we do. When you think of all the ways that what we offer can touch people, everything from career services to the shopping experience to this holiday or that holiday, um, I liken Goodwill to a community pillar that I would love to see it and see us continue to evolve in a way where people feel like Goodwill is a necessity, like a utility is. That without a Goodwill, that you'd be missing a very important part of the community. A part where I don't have to throw things away, a part where I can help other people easily, a place where I can be creative and I can save money and all these things. When you think of all of the parts of your life that we can place some kind of solution, that's a really special place to be. And I hope people see us that way. And I know every now and then it's like, oh, their prices are high or what have you. But again, we're honoring the gifts that come to us in the form of goods, but we're also marking them all down to $1.
Mm-hmm.
So, and resellers obviously are able to use Goodwill as a place to not only purchase, but resell with their own margin. So as much as you might say, wow, prices are high, there's some people out there that aren't finding high at all. They're finding room for them to have a business.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, like I mentioned, my wife to the tune of $2,000, and I mean net above what she spends on shopping herself and the things that she keeps. So, there's definitely treasure out there.
yes.
And I think in the world of side hustling and the freelance economy, if you love shopping, don't go drive an Uber and deliver meals. Go to Goodwill and find cool things to resell and have fun doing the thing that you're already passionate about and that you like doing. Retail therapy with a little bit of earning potential at the end of it. Well,
and creativity to boot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Bryan, fascinating. I love that you spent some time with the audience today. I was definitely super excited when I saw this interview pop up in my calendar today because I've always been a fan of the brand, and I was excited to get some of my insider questions answered. If folks want to connect with you or continue to follow along on the work that you're doing or find a Goodwill in your region, where would you like to send folks to connect?
You know what? If they want to go to my LinkedIn, I'll even just give my email address. I'm very accessible, which is Bryan, Bryan .Stewart at sngoodwill.org.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are watching, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you are listening to the podcast, a honest review is how we find a larger audience organically. And if there is a person out in your life who has a shopping habit and they want to make some money at it, or a nonprofit marketer, or just somebody who you think would be fascinated in the conversation that I had with Bryan today about the cultural trend of the circular economy or thrifting, or just some of these amazing cultural insights that are sparking this movement of trying to put less things in landfills and save more of the things that we buy every single day. Don't forget to share the show. And with that, Bryan, I will wish you a great afternoon. Can't wait to check out the stores next time we're in your area. Thanks for spending some time with the audience today.
Yeah. Reach out. I'll be happy to